Hello, Dazzle. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me today. I'm glad you're here. So, today I wanted to address some of the myths that I frequently hear regarding people who have chronic illnesses. So, the first myth is that chronic illness is a problem for the elderly. So, approximately 27% of children in the United States have a chronic condition, and 1 in 15 have multiple chronic conditions. About 52% of the working age, which is 18 to 64, have at least one chronic illness, and about 7% have multiple chronic illnesses. So older adults are disproportionately affected by chronic conditions such as diabetes, arthritis, and heart disease, with nearly 95% having at least one chronic condition and nearly 80% having two or more. But these numbers demonstrate that chronic illness is much more common in the geriatric population, but that it's far from being exclusive to that age bracket. When people see these numbers, they're often misled because they don't look at all the data, which really further illuminates things. 80% of all adults are younger than 65, which means that it's pretty significant that more than half of this group has a chronic illness. So the next myth, people with chronic illness don't want to work. Well, let's go back to the data. About 52% of the working age adults have at least one chronic illness, and about 25% have multiple chronic illnesses. About 26% of individuals of the working age group are diagnosed with a disease that is considered to cause disability. Despite all of that, the unemployment rate is only 3.6%. But that's only looking at everyone. So if we want to be a little bit more specific, we can look at the disability rate, which is only 7.6% of those with disability are not working. What all of this means is that most of the people who have chronic illness or disability are working. So just like everyone else, those with chronic illness and or disability are working, whether they want to or not. So the next myth is that chronic illness affects men more than women. And the reverse is actually true. Women are more likely to have a chronic illness than men. In fact, 38% of American women have at least one chronic health condition compared to 30% of men. Of the top leading causes of death for women, 6 of them are chronic diseases compared to only 5 of them being chronic diseases for men. And this means that women die from chronic diseases 44.7% of the time as compared to men who die from chronic diseases 41.6% of the time. And granted, this isn't a huge difference in the gender representation, but it does have a slightly higher representation and risk for females. So the next myth is a big one. Chronic illness is the result of lifestyle choices. So this is going to take a little bit more time to tackle. This is too broad of a statement to be completely true. Among U.S. adults, more than 90% of those with type 2 diabetes, 80% of people with coronary artery disease, and 70% of people who've had a stroke, and 70% of those who have colon cancer are considered to have been preventable by combination of not smoking, avoiding being overweight, engaging in moderate physical activity, having a healthier diet, and avoiding the consumption of alcohol. However, that's far from being all of the chronic illnesses, right? Like genetic illnesses are not preventable in that once the person is born, they have the DNA that they have, and at this point, we can't do anything about that. There are some diseases that are not classified as genetic that also have a strong connection to genetics, such as Crohn's disease, celiac disease, and macular degeneration, which have a genetic contribution of about 40 to 50%. So, not every disease is affected by lifestyle choices, but most of them are. With all of that being said, what science tells us is that our environmental exposures have more impact on our health than our genetics. When looking at diseases overall, genetics have less than 5% impact on our health. This information is very powerful and leads many to the false conclusion that chronic illness is the result of our lifestyle choices. Because in order for it to be a choice, the person in question must have the ability to do something other than what is causing disease. Individual responsibility, while important, only has full effect where people have equal access to healthy choices. If a person is too poor to afford health care, they are not choosing to not get health care. That is something being imposed upon them. Those who live in poor communities are more likely to develop a chronic condition than those who live in affluent communities. Poor health in poor communities has a 15% higher probability than in an affluent community. And this means that while environment plays a major role in our health, choice isn't as easy to parse out. A person's risk of developing a chronic disease is determined by a multitude of factors, including an individual's education, income, lifestyle, family history, and even the presence of other chronic conditions. While most of these factors are considered environmental, most of them are not factors that are under an individual's complete control. The education a person receives depends largely on how wealthy their family is. Their lifestyle will also be greatly impacted by their wealth. It's difficult to make the choice to exercise regularly when you need to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. The impact of race cannot be ignored here either. The lack of representation in research, equitable care, and differences in economic status all play into the fact that racial and ethnic minorities are 1.5 to 2 times more likely than whites to have most of the major chronic diseases. While these are certainly environmental factors that are impacting their health outcomes, it can't be said that a person chooses which race they're born. It is absolutely true that lifestyle and environmental exposures have a huge impact on our health outcomes. But it is not true that a person can freely and easily make choices regarding their lifestyles and environmental exposures, meaning that chronic illness being the result of lifestyle choices is a myth. Well, there are many myths about chronic illness, but that's about all the time I have for today. What are some of the myths and misconceptions that you've heard? Thanks for coming and spending time with me. If you like the video, click the like button. It really does help. And until we can talk again, you guys be sure to take care of yourselves. Bye.